Today we'll be covering Maxine, the third part in T. West's Weird Woman trilogy. 3 movies about very mentally stable and very normal women. 6 years after the events of X, and about 67 years after the events of Pearl, we follow Maxine from the original movie after surviving her encounter with the touchy-feely grandma as she's still attempting to break into show business. A movie that I've been patiently waiting to see due to my fondness for mentally unstable women, potentially channeling her inner trauma of her friends and co-workers dying to elder abuse, except the other way around. She gives a powerful and an emotional audition for an upcoming horror movie, The Puritan 2. We also learn that at this point in time, the Richard Ramirez Night Stalker killings are currently happening, with Richard Ramirez being a very real and prolific serial killer in the California area between 1984 and 1985. A serial killer who was eventually caught and mercilessly beat by members of the public, because sometimes mob justice is a good thing. Maxine, much like she was doing 6 years ago in X, is still creating adult films and working at the same strip club because she's got to get that bread. Her agent and entertainment lawyer Teddy, played by Giancarlo Esposito, as I don't think this man has ever underperformed on screen before, informs her that she's going to be given the lead role in The Puritan 2 on account of being able to cry really good. Must be a woman thing. Maxine, being the girl boss that she is on that constant grind, also works as a peep show performer. But while working as a peep show performer, we see someone pay for the privilege of seeing a peep show performer, for them to then be incredibly offended after seeing a peep show performer. There's nothing more anger-inducing than the sight of a naked woman. After finishing a shift at one of her 12 jobs, she waits around for her co-worker Tabby to finish up her shift. Tabby being played by the singer Halsey, known for singing words with her mouth. They walk together to get a bite to eat, and as Tabby gets into a taxi, she invites Maxine out to a party in the Hollywood Hills, but Maxine declines due to having an extreme phobia of hills and social situations. Understandable. Walking home by herself, Maxine's followed into an alleyway by someone wielding a knife, but learning her lesson after spending some time with the grandparents, she doesn't leave the house unless she's armed. But luckily for her, she happens to have 2, as well as keeping a gun on her. After luring the man towards her by pretending to be a potential victim, she pulls out a weapon and forces him to remove all of his clothes, like a game of truth or dare, except with more threat of imminent death. She makes him do somewhat suggestive things towards the barrel of the gun, things that I'm not going to be able to show you on YouTube, due to the gun being underage. Still completely unclothed, she tells the man to lay down face first on the concrete, and rather rudely castrates him without asking first. At least have some manners about it. Later that night, while sleeping on the sofa with her friend and video store owner Leon, she's woken up to the sound of someone knocking on her apartment door as a horror movie plays on the TV. But after opening the front door, she discovers that it was just someone playing Ding Dong Ditch except wrong because they've left a package behind. A package containing a VHS tape. And a VHS tape that contains the footage of the adult film she was filming 6 years ago during the events of X, right before all of her friends were made her ex-friends. A movie that, due to the circumstances around its filming, very likely wasn't released publicly on account of the person filming it neglecting their responsibility to live. The person who gave her the VHS tape appears to be the angry leather-wearing man from the Peep Show, who managed to track her down with the help of a private investigator named John Labatt, played by Kevin Bacon, a man named Kevin who really likes bacon. We then see a tape beginning to play, showing a man recording 2 women restrained in a closet, as that's where he keeps his collection. The 2 women both appear to be Maxine's friends and co-workers, Amber and Tabby, who were both attending the same party in the hills. They're taken by a group of men to who seems to be the angry woman watcher from the Peep Show, a rather strange gift for someone who doesn't seem to like women very much. And while Maxine's friends are out partying, having the time of their lives, well, the time at the end of their lives, Maxine is getting a full head cast created for the movie. She's left alone in a room as the sludge is left to harden, and unable to see, hear, and barely breathe, Maxine starts to think about Pearl, the weird old lady who did weird old lady things. Because despite her strong attitude and demeanor, it's becoming apparent that she's still haunted by the events that took place 6 years ago, because she didn't get to release the movie that she was working really hard on. She feels someone's hands begin to non-consensually touch her from behind, and as this is the movie business, this is a very realistic scenario. But she thinks that it's Pearl who's come back for seconds, causing Maxine to fall backwards out of the chair, leaving her forced to pull the mold off her face as she begins to hyperventilate. The next day, Amber and Tabby's bodies are discovered floating together in a fish pond, with a pentagram branded into Tabby's arm and another in Amber's face, as they both got drunk and decided to get face tattoos. Two bodies that were deliberately left in a location to be found, as the weird, woman-hating man hates women so much that he wants the entire world to know about it. And I guess he thinks they need a bath or something. Maxine finds a note on her car telling her to call this number for a good time, and initially intending to discard it, as someone has clearly confused this piece of paper with a bathroom stall, she unfolds the paper to find a page from her high school yearbook with her picture circled. Wondering what this weirdo is doing with pictures of little girls, Maxine calls the number to figure out what's going on. The person on the other end tells her that he knows about the deaths in Texas 6 years ago, so unless she wants to end up in a Texan prison, she'll come and meet him. And that's exactly what she does. She attends the meeting, and it's John, the private detective. He begins to list off the names of everyone killed on the farm, so essentially the entire cast of the first movie apart from Maxine, and on behalf of his employer, requests that Maxine attends an event out in the Hollywood Hills. While heading home, Maxine is confronted by the two detectives called to the scene of Amber and Tabby skinny dipping, Detective Williams and Detective Torres. But without telling her that her friends are dead, repulsed by the presence of law enforcement, Maxine refuses to talk to them and goes inside. Not wanting to talk to the police for obvious reasons, pertaining to shortening the length of some elderly people's lives by a fortnight or so, she asks Leon to help with the VHS. She wants to discover who sent her this. He explains to her that he can't find out who created the tape, but because the tape is an uncommon brand that isn't widely used anymore, he'll be able to call around and find out where they've been recently sold. Maxine, meeting up with the director of the movie Elizabeth, she's asked if she's willing to do whatever it takes to make it, even if her own life depends on it. And after watching X, we already know that she is absolutely willing to do whatever it takes, old lady in her way or not. Elizabeth takes her up to the old Bates Motel set, but Maxine appears to get her horror movies mixed up and can see Pearl staring at her through the window, as she's quite often prone to daydreaming about weird old ladies. And while on her way out of the studio lot after her meeting with the director, she realizes that John is in the car behind her, filming her. Unleashing her feminine rage, she's suddenly overcome with the urge to be Wolverine and places her keys through her fingers before walking over to him, throwing the camera to the floor and repeatedly punching him in the face with the keys as he needs to open up those paws. Heading straight to her entertainment lawyer and fried chicken establishment owner, she tells him what's been going on with the private detective and how she's seen best to deal with the situation. But Teddy, being particularly fond of violent, volatile women, tells Maxine that there's nothing to worry about anymore, as he reassures her that he will handle it. Later that night, while working in the video store, Leon's attacked by the leather-wearing Giallo-inspired man and slashed with his own blade. Caught off guard, Leon's unable to defend himself and is killed before being able to help Maxine with the tape by someone who very likely doesn't want her to end up finding its origins. And right after the killing, the killer gets in the car with John, the private detective, who very much knows what's just happened and doesn't seem to be all that bothered by it. And the next day, Maxine heads downstairs to the VHS store that's just next door to see that Leon's body is being wheeled out on a gurney with a pentagram carved into his forehead. Earlier, the two detectives wanted to talk to Maxine about the deaths because she was connected to both of them, and now someone else that she's connected to has died as well. But judging by her reaction, the reaction of someone desperately trying to touch a dead body, it's apparent that she had nothing to do with the killings. Well, these killings. She's taken to the police station and shown the bodies of her other dead friends because the police are apparently hellbent on showing her as many dead friends as they possibly can. They tell her that they don't believe that the weird little Night Stalker man is behind these killings, but whoever it is that is responsible for them has been trying to make it appear that way. But Maxine, thinking that everyone has a right to do a little murder now and then, refuses to help with the case and leaves without giving them any information. Heading to work after an exhausting morning of all of her friends being murdered, again, Maxine meets her co-star Molly on set, who tells Maxine that she's got to get ready to head out to an elaborate party out in the Hollywood Hills, as apparently all of these partygoers really hate flat land. And while on the studio lot, she's confronted by John after mistaking his face for a lock and repeatedly putting her keys in it. He pulls out his gun in the middle of a public place and begins to chase after her. Eventually, she makes it to the psycho house as this absolute psycho is chasing her, and just as he's about to walk through the front door with his weapon drawn, he's interrupted by a security guard and escorted off the property. Damn security guards always getting in the way of me doing my woman murders. At this point in time, she knows that John isn't going to let up and is going to continue coming after her until he gets what he wants. Whatever that is. So that night at a club, she lures him out to the back, where he finds himself confronted by Maxine and Teddy, before being knocked unconscious by her friend Shepard from the strip club. Sometime later, suffering from a really bad case of baseball bat to the skullitis, John wakes up handcuffed to the steering wheel of a car in a junkyard. John, possessed with the profound ability to say literally anything other than what he really should say, has no choice but to beg for forgiveness as Maxine activates the car crusher, and all three of them watch as he's slowly crushed to death. Heading home for a relaxing relaxing beer and a bite to eat after another average evening, Maxine remembers that both Amber and Tabby went missing after going to that party in the Hollywood Hills, and now her co-star Molly is going there. So looking at the address that John gave her for the event, she realizes that it's in the Hollywood Hills. Confronting her fears of slightly raised surfaces, she decides to put a stop to this once and for all, and drives out to end all of the killings. But as she pulls away from her apartment, the two detectives begin to follow her. Arriving at the property armed with a gun, she lets herself in, but the place seems as dead as all three of her friends. But hearing movement upstairs and not being a fan of people making noises, she goes up to investigate. But what she ends up finding is a recording of her religious preacher father talking to her back when she was a little girl. She turns to see her father now, talking to her as a big girl. He's been the one in the leather gloves committing all of these killings and making rather strange decisions due to dropping off home movies at her apartment. He explains that he's putting an end to the debauchery of Hollywood, as it's been stealing away their daughters and turning them into sinners. Backing up from the strange religious man trying to cop a feel, she accidentally knocks a suitcase down the stairs, and out comes tumbling the dismembered remains of Molly. He thinks it's Build-A-Girlfriend workshop, and much like the loving father that he is, he then proceeds to place a plastic bag over Maxine's face because she's been hoarding all of the air around here. After losing consciousness, she wakes up and finds herself restrained to a palm tree, surrounded by a bunch of weird dudes in robes. Maxine always wanted to be famous, so now her dad is going to make that dream come true. He tells her that her friends didn't accept God's love, so that he had to kill them all because some bearded guy sitting on a cloud told him to do it. He plans to perform an exorcism to save her from the devil that's infiltrated her soul, and holds up a burning pentagram that he's going to brand her face with. Suddenly the detectives arrive fashionably late and shoot one of the cultists as they try to pull out a weapon. A large-scale shootout erupts and Maxine's father accidentally sets himself on fire before jumping into the pool to escape. Using the switchblade that she took from Billy No Nuts in the beginning of the movie, Maxine's able to free herself from the restraints, and after being pulled into the water by one of the cultists, she thrusts it into his nose to keep it there for safekeeping, before grabbing a gun and going to finish what she came here to do. Detective Torres is hit and bleeds out while laying against the Hollywood sign, and after hearing a few more shots, Maxine finds Detective Williams as she's suddenly and violently converted to Christianity with a crucifix sticking out of her eye socket. Further up the hill, Maxine finds her father who's been shot and is lying on the ground, and for revenge for making her walk all the way up that stupid hill, she blows his head off. It then cuts to a news report saying that the Night Stalker has been caught on account of being an idiot, and we see that Maxine is being interviewed on television, as she's not just a famous movie star now, but she's a famous movie star who took down her serial killer father. With one less serial killer on the streets, these Cocoa Pops can rest easy. She attends a red carpet event due to the success of The Puritan 2, with everyone screaming and shouting her name, except she's just having a trauma-induced hallucination and is imagining the entire thing, as where she really finds herself is back on set to continue the movie, because that girl boss grind never ends. So before this video comes to an end, I'd like to just give a massive shout out and a big thank you to all of the YouTube members and patrons, the people who every month continue to go out of their way to help support the channel. If you're interested in becoming a YouTube member or patron yourself, not only are you just generally being a great help to the channel, but you also get access to a few little perks, like being able to join the private Discord server, where you can then get links to all uncensored versions of videos going forward. So starting off with this week's new YouTube signups, a big thank you to Alan Askaya, Not Emmett, Alan Bigwood, Yunus Amir Yavuz, JP Hatecraft, Giant Mutant Ant, Zaza Lord, Salmon Dinner, Bullies, Slissa Burnham, Chris, Eric Britton, Lord Demoose, Alex Moon, Mano Ferrero, Thiago Urate, Jeff Kind, Pedrux Gamer JP, Tolito, Kenny HH, Vessa Pitson, The Lord of Stuff, Gremlin Absolute, Contron 18, Black Fairy, Ryan Birch, Ashley Taylor, Miriam Howie, Matthew Sabo, Private Tekken, Pineapple, and Stephen McCommerce. And now heading over to this week's new Patreon signups, a massive thank you to Jordan Santiago, Bystromic, The Nutcracker, Sean Gertkins, James H, Lucas, Jesse Miracle, Tyler Lloyd, Dax Jacobs, No, Justin, Lucas Schroll, Donovan Preston, The Beard Gamer Laku, Tommy Kun, Alpaca, Jesse Reach, John, Matthew Strickland, Teedcorn, and Robert McDavitt. So once again, a massive shout out to all of the YouTube members and patrons, and a big thank you to everyone else for watching.